Here's a bridge case that was sent in to analyze. It's a cantilever bridge where tooth number 12 and 13 are the abutment teeth and tooth number 14 is the pontic tooth. Obviously not an ideal situation long term, but this was meant for a long-term temporary to prepare for an implant. So overall, when I look at this, I think it was very well done. There's a couple things we'll talk about to correct. But well done. It looks good. He obviously designed it well. It looks as if the connectors were okay. You can always double check the connectors, which we'd like to see over 12 in a posterior restoration. The one between 12 and 13 is 13.32 millimeters. Between 13 and 14 is 12.11 millimeters. So very good job on that. So the connectors are good. And he also was smart to use the intersecting connector design instead of the anatomic. If you're confused what intersecting versus anatomic connectors are, you can refer to the in-lab bridge videos. One thing he did say is when he went to mill this out, he got what we call a data error. Now that's kind of the worst thing you possibly can get with the in-lab software is a data error. It means it's milling and it'll get all the way through or halfway through, then all of a sudden it just stops and says data error and you lose everything. So you lose the block and it's quite the disaster. So I have run across this numerous times, unfortunately, and the best I can tell you is just try to make sure you don't have any blips in your margins. I would make sure you don't have any of these wrinkles here, and also where the problem could have been is it looks as if you've got a little bit too much of a step in here with that, and the burr may try to reach in there and had trouble doing it, especially with a 12S burr. Surprisingly, the one thing that I do that often fixes this is just simply I switch the sprue. It was on the mesial, I switch it to the distal, and oftentimes that in itself will help make it work, and that's the easiest solution I can. But if you just follow the design protocols, you should in general be okay. So let's go back to the design phase, and one thing I can say by looking at this that I would correct for sure is the margination of the pontic area. Now, because this is he was probably trying to make this a smaller cantilever. I understand why he did that smaller. So if we go to the model phase, you can see that the bottom line of that molar is really quite small. You know, what I do try to do is visualize on that molars, if it was an actual tooth number 14 there, how would I prep that, or how would the prep look? And obviously the margin would be much bigger. So that's one thing I would keep in mind when designing these, but other than that, I think he did a very nice job. So let's just go back to administration. I'll run really quickly through what I would do. We'll go ahead and delete this. And when choosing the bridge, we're on bridge, we go right to left, bridge, crown, biogeneric individual. The two teeth are 12 and 13, and we've got a pontic on tooth number 14. Then we'll go ahead and select our material. The material, let's go ahead and just say we're doing this in Emax. You certainly could do it in a temporary material as well. And we also, one thing we have to do is get connectors. So make sure you have a connector as intersecting and click on the two connectors. Very important. Okay, so let's go back to the model. Okay, so I fast forward and went ahead and remarginated tooth number 12 and 13 and 14. You can see the margin on tooth number 13. It's pretty far subgingival, but it looks like the margins are fairly clear. Now you can see what I did on 14. I extended that out just a little bit just to kind of visualize what a prep on tooth number 14 may look like. That may help alleviate the data error as well. If you want a smaller pontic space, just to decrease the amount of forces on 12 and 13 in this temporary situation, you always can take it a little bit out of occlusion, for instance. But it'll definitely make the mill easier if you draw the bottom line correctly. So we define the insertion axis. This is done very nicely. 12 and 13 were prepped in parallel, so we don't have to touch that. And we'll go ahead to the proposal. Now with the proposal, we've gone over these parameters in other videos. The main thing that I always concentrate on is make sure my minimal thicknesses are not too high. We're just going to keep these at 600 for both the abutment teeth. We'll go to 13. Make sure that these are correct. And 14, the only thing I'm going to switch on the Pontic is I certainly like the gingival spacing to be a little bit against the tissue. Okay, we'll hit OK and we'll go ahead and get our proposals. Okay, and here's roughly the proposal that you're getting. One thing that I'll tell you is when I look at the connector space, I don't like things to be reaching over to the other tooth. So notice if the papilla is right here, I like it to be an even connector. So I'm actually going to take this tooth and bring it over and then just correct that space by bringing it over with the Pontic. It gives you a much more even space, and especially when you're doing multi-layer, it's going to make you much more successful with the connectors. Okay, so I would for sure do that. We've definitely got an open contact we need to fix over here on tooth number 12. We can just do that really quickly. And you guys know how to design teeth, but the main thing we have to be sure of is the connector. Okay, the other thing I would look at here at the mesial distal or the dimension, excuse me, and if we look at tooth number 12, we can go ahead and put that transparent. You don't have that pretty much is where it has to be. However, if number 13 is a little bit smaller, but it's a but you have room where you probably are going to be able to make this a little bit bigger. So what I would probably do on this one, just to help the connectors a little bit, is use my buccolingual dimension tool and just go ahead and make that just a little bit bigger to match the other teeth. Okay, and so that's pretty good. I mean, you could tweak a little bit. We definitely need to check the connectors to make sure that they're over 12 and 12 millimeters, like we talked about before. The last thing that I would probably do in this scenario is I'd like to always check where the cusp tips are in relation to the opposing dentition. So we'll go ahead and we'll put up the lower jaw, and they're a little bit out. I'd like to see them kind of tilting in. So the great thing about the InLab software, the InLab 4.0, is we do have the ability to actually link all these together. So let's go ahead and down here, you can't see it on my screen, there is a linking tool. We'll go ahead and click on that link. We'll handcuff 12, 13, and 14 together. And then we can go ahead and just click on our move and then rotate tool, and we can rotate them all at once to a more acceptable position in relation to those cusps. And then by doing that, I'm probably going to have to fix that contact area again, but you guys know how to do that at this point. And the last thing I will say about the milling is when you mill a bridge out of an Emax 40 millimeter block, what happens is you get a process called step milling. You'd step mill where it mills out the sides of the restoration prior to actually starting milling it, and it actually ruins the block. If there's enough left to do a crown or two, you won't be able to use it. So what I certainly recommend that you do is you actually export the selection to a stack. Okay, now if you export it to a stack, you can review the stack mill videos, and then you can actually stack mill this if it's milled out of Emax. You can't stack mill any temporary materials, but when you stack mill something, it will not step mill. Now the reason it step mills in the regular mode is because when you use the 12S burrs, it needs to remove some excess on the outside in order to reach some of these hard to reach places with bridges. So go ahead and stack mill it if you need to avoid the step milling. So hopefully that helps. It actually was a really nice job with this case, so just needed a couple tweaks and it should be great.